Welcome, everyone. This is a quad education webinar where we have two parents of students that worked with quad education to apply to college this past year with us today to answer questions about what it was like to work with quad education and go through the college application process with their children. We're very thankful to have them and to hear from them. I just want to start off and introduce myself. My name is Hallie Caldwell, and I'm a member of the Quad Education team. Quad Education is a college admissions consulting company that works with students and families throughout the college application process, from early candidacy development, which is working with students as early as middle school through mid-high school to figure out what classes to take, what extracurriculars to participate in to set students up for a strong college profile. And then we work with students on SAT, ACT studying, deciding what colleges to apply to, getting letters of recommendation, really everything, filling out the college application, everything up until they receive acceptance letters and decide what schools to attend. So I just want to say thank you all for joining us again. And to Ardith and Tara, thank you so much for being here to answer our questions today. We're going to ask some predetermined questions, and then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A from the audience. So feel free to pop questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to those at the end. We'll also send out a recording of this webinar to everyone that's attended today as well, so be on the lookout for that. So first off, I would just love for you both to introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about you, what school your child attend or got into, was accepted at, and has decided to attend. Ardith, you want to start us off here?
Sure. Thank you so much, Hallie. So my name is Ardith, and in the Massachusetts, state of Massachusetts, and I'm an executive coach and psychotherapist. And my daughter, Anna, goes to school in Boston, and she was accepted at Tufts University in the early decision, through the early decision option. And so we got the process was truncated because we didn't go through all of the other applications, but she did get a few others in, but she got accepted in early decision. So
well, congratulations to Anna. That's very exciting. Tara, can you introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, so my name is Tara Latif. I have 4 children, and I went through the application cycle with my second son this time. We live in Northern Virginia, and he attends a combination high school. He goes to a base high school and then also attends something called a governor school program, which is like a science magnet program. Some of your parents may be aware of what that is. So he was accepted to the BSMD program at VCU, and that is what drew us to Quad in the first place, looking for BSMD counseling. But he had also applied to some traditional colleges. He was accepted to our state flagship UVA, VCU, William and Mary, and then he was also accepted to Yale and Harvard. And he's decided to attend Harvard.
Fantastic. And for those of you that may not know, a BSMD program is pretty much a combined bachelor's and med school application. So you apply to med school when you apply to your undergrad, and
right, it's like doing 2 applications in one.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really intense.
All right. Well, thank you both. Tara, can you give us a little bit of a little background on what your experience with the college application process was like before your son started applying to schools this past year?
Yeah, so I actually have an older son who was also interested somewhat in the BSMD applications process, and he did apply. He was not accepted to any of those programs, and we were somewhat puzzled because we thought, in fact, compared to my second son who went through this cycle, he had, better numbers, and some respects had, we thought he was pretty competitive. And So we took a step back and said, well, he's successful getting into some really good schools, but not into this program. Maybe there was something off in terms of framing it. And, then we started looking more and more into this process of the combined programs and realized there's a lot more to it than just showing up with grades and, what looks like being qualified on paper. So, so we were very happy to find Quad, and, they really walked us through what it means to apply to this combined program.
Fantastic. What about you, Ardith? What was your experience with the college application process before your daughter started her journey?
Well, this was our first experience as a family going through the process. I will say that I had a fair amount of experience with the process through working with either some of my executive coaching clients, family members, and through my psychotherapy business, having a number of clients going through it. So kind of witnessing it secondhand and hearing a lot about it just from friends as well. So I feel like I came into it with, a fair amount of exposure through other people's experience, which was tremendously helpful. And my daughter's school, I think, had did a lot of counseling and coaching along the way, starting in probably sophomore year.
Right. Fantastic. Ardith, what was did you start any part of the college application process or even just looking at schools with your daughter before you started working with Quad? And what was that like?
Yes, we had started, as I said, her current high school does a lot of weekly meetings with the students group and some individual meetings as well. So they have a pretty good, solid process at school, which we were pretty happy with. And then we had just done some of our own research and looking around before working with Quad. But I think, it was as we immersed ourselves in the process, it became more and more ominous. So we got some good pre-exposure, before starting with Quad.
Absolutely. What about you, Tara?
Yeah, I was listening to, Ardith's experience, and it was anything but that for us. We go to large public school in Northern Virginia, and everybody means well, and the teachers are lovely, and the counselors are lovely, but everybody's just too busy. There's way too many students. The caseload is huge, and no one's really doing college counseling. When the counselor meets the students, they're basically like, what courses are you taking next year? Are you meeting your requirements? And it's just checking the box. There is one college counselor at our school, but the woman's so overwhelmed. So it was pretty apparent to us we're going to need some help outside. And so we started looking probably the summer after sophomore year.
Great. So Tara, I'll have you answer this question first. I think you kind of answered it a little bit within your last answer, but what made you decide to reach out to a college application consulting company? And kind of where were you in the process when you reached out?
Right. So I think it was after 10th grade. We had the experience of my older son where we felt like, on paper, we had everything we needed, but yet something was obviously missing. There is something to be said for how all the pieces of the application, if you will, come together. So we knew we needed some help specifically for BSMD. And so we, started looking out. We interviewed a few different companies before we picked Quad.
All right. How about you, Ardith?
Yeah, so a few different things were part of the decision to work with Quad, to have additional counseling, even though my daughter's school, she goes to Boston University Academy. And as I said, they have a very good process and good, advising there. But as I said, in my previous question that, it's an ominous process, and there's a lot, you find out so much more as you enter into it more deeply. And so I felt like the counselors did a great job working with Anna. But I would be not knowing, and I'm sort of the family member helping out and advising in the background, and I wouldn't really know that much about what's going on with the process. So I felt like it would make sense to have more of a bridge to bring the information together so that there's kind of better all around communication, because I knew that there's only so much communication I could have with the college counselors. Their time is limited as well. And I also thought about the fact that I do executive coaching, and I think the college counseling process is a great way to sort of be exposed to a project management and coaching function, if you will. And so I think it's a great opportunity to experience what it's like to go through a sort of managing a large project and having coaching to support the process. So we decided, that was another deciding factor as well.
That absolutely makes a lot of sense.
I could also sort of say in terms of where we were at in the application process when we reached out was junior year, probably maybe about a year ago. Maybe it was March or April. I don't remember exactly which, but we were well on our way into the process. And I do wish we had reached out a bit sooner, even though I will say that it still was incredibly invaluable, no matter where we were at in the process. But I think it was really very organizing, and it was actually also a great time to start right about now.
Fantastic. So while you were just searching for consulting companies, what made you choose Quad to look at, and what made you ultimately decide to pick Quad as the company you wanted to work with your child on this journey? Ardith, I'll have you take this one first.
Okay. Well, we had I had a number of different ideas from other colleagues and friends. We had met with another company, but when I met a friend of mine from my daughter's school, another parent, we were meeting for some reason at the school for some school function, and she was telling me all about her process and her older son, who had gone through the application process and had some frustrating experiences with it. And so she said that her next son, who's in the same grade as my daughter, they were going to be working with Quad, and I was asking them how they found Quad and how the process of the work was going so far. And she had done a lot of research on the different places, and I was like, oh great, somebody who's already done the research, this is perfect. So I felt like we had a really good solid referral, and so that's kind of how we made that decision, was just from the referral, basically.
Great to know. Tara, what about you?
Yeah, so we were researching the combined programs and how to get help there, and I think we started online, narrowed it down, spoke to a few different people. I liked when I think it was Kamara that I spoke with initially, and just having a very clear sense of giving us a roadmap, basically, right? This is what it's going to look like. These are the steps. This is the parts we're going to help you with. This is where, your effort is going to come in. I felt like they laid it out very clearly. The expectations were very clear, what we could expect from the process, what we needed to do. And so I like that. I like that clarity, as opposed to, oh, well, there's this, process and we'll just be with you. So I liked having all those specific steps. So yeah, that's why we picked them. And then they gave us options on specific counselors. It wasn't just like you were given one, like, they gave us a little bit of background information, and then we were able to interview those counselors and got started. So
That's great.
Hallie, could I add something else?
Please, yes, absolutely.
Tara, you just made me think of the interview, sort of meeting Kamir, who was the person we also met with as an initial meeting with Quad. And he was just absolutely wonderful, and he was such a great listener. I think he really got Anna and what we were looking for.
Yeah.
And she's interested in medicine, and he was talking about some of the counselors at Quad who have medical experience and have been to med school. And we were just so thrilled that there was like, like such a quick match. And that, he really understood kind of more deeply what we were looking for, which was something that just can't really be matched in any college counseling process with that level of specificity. So that was really a big hit. And the fact that there'd be a couple counselors working with Anna, one on a more strategic basis and one on a more day-to-day, in kind of the more minutia. So that was a perfect blend.
That's great. Kamir is fantastic. He's fantastic. He's just great to work with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, once you chose Quad, what was the process of working with your consultant or consultants like? How did you work together? And also, what was it like for your child's to have that? Tara, I'll have you answer this one first.
Yeah, I can go. So it was great. I think especially, every child has their own personality. I'll say that I have 4 kids, and number 2 is probably the most challenging. Only because, he's good, he does his thing, but there's something about advice coming from parents that doesn't sit well with him. So it was great having someone that he related to, that met him on his terms. And the rapport was really good between him and the counselors that he had. We also had 2 counselors, like Ardit mentioned, which was great. One was sort of overall strategy, and the other one was sort of more day-to-day touching base. And I like the fact that 2 people were weighing in, because one person is one person, but having someone else with the same expertise weigh in was good. I like the fact that the meetings were very regular. So we started early, and I highly recommend starting early, because, what you do over the course of time is what goes into your application. So if you're not doing stuff, then there's not going to be, there's only so much you can dress up, in other words, right? So we got a lot of specific guidance on what we should be doing to build a CV. So that was something we got out of the consultant as well, not just how to write the essays and how to put the application together. That was great. And meeting every quarter to say, hey, I thought you were going to do this with this club, and this was your goal. And for that other activity, we had spoken about going a little deeper and, targeting this as our, outcome. How are you doing with that? Right. I think it also made my son Armand think, okay, well, that meeting's coming up, and where am I with my goals? So
yeah. The accountability is always great.
Accountability, yes.
So did you and your son start meeting more often with your counselor as senior year began?
Yeah. So when we, I would say we started meeting more regularly this summer before senior year, because most of the application writing, building was done then.
Yeah.
During junior year, we were meeting more on a quarterly basis with email exchanges in between.
And then as you got to be kind of in that more regular meeting space, was it mainly through like a video call every so often and emails or texts?
Video call, and the emails were flying every day. I mean, so they were, they had created a set of Google Docs for each piece of the application. I was on it, he was on it. So I was not obviously putting stuff in, but I could see what was going on, right? Back and forth. So that was really nice. And there was not so much face-to-face meeting later on, but there was a lot of email traffic. But I think they said if we wanted, we could have reached out for that as well.
Right. Fantastic. What about you, Ardith? What was the process of working with your consultants like, and also for your daughter?
Sure. Yes. Our process also was really impeccable, I will say. The consultants, the two consultants that we had, as I said, one of them had a medical degree, and the other one I think was an absolutely fabulous writer and editor. And I just love the amount of organization that the two of them brought to the process, where it sort of felt like a kind of a shapeless, amorphous process all of a sudden started to become more clear. There was really quite an extraordinary, it was an Excel type spreadsheet. And it was just full of details and timelines and data that got filled out along the way in the process that just really brought a great kind of mapping system to the process. So for me, it felt very reassuring that I didn't have to be the one carrying the torch for the mapping. I don't have time for it because it's such a detailed process. And for my daughter, well, she's a great academic, sort of organizing large scale projects is definitely not her thing. So this was the perfect solution, really, to have the process being managed by somebody else. Well, also I'm able to kind of look in through a window or sometimes join in as well. So the process went, I thought it went very smoothly, and the consultants were very available and reasonable, with reason, very good, sort of time management, getting back to my daughter on a regular basis, and plenty of in-person meetings, lots of email exchanges, and no shortage of support and help.
That's great. Great to hear. See, what's some of the work that you worked on with your consultants? Was it just, I know, Tara, you talked a little bit about pre-planning, but was it mainly the personal statements? Was it, or like all parts of the application package?
Yeah, it was for us. So junior year, it was the planning, kind of put stuff into 4 zones for the BSMD. And then this is what you're doing for each of them. These are what your deliverables should look like. And if we had to change things, we changed things. So it was creating the roadmap. And it was exactly what Ardith said, bringing order to chaos, right? It was all these, it was very amorphous when we started, and then it became highly, highly specific. And for kids who are good at academics, I think they like order. They respond well to that. They're used to it because of school. So it was that part of it. And then when we started the actual application process, the Common App essay, writing the activities, descriptions, getting it into that 150 word character, limit. Oh God, that was hard. And then all of the medical school supplemental essays, and they were marvelous at that. We also had one who was an MD and one who was more into the writing and stuff. So that combination really worked well.
Great. What about for you, Ardith? What parts of the application did Quad work on with you and your daughter?
Yeah, so Anna had already done a lot of her, extracurricular things, and course choices had been decided already. So by the time we came in to working with Quad, like I said, it was in the spring. So I think most of the work that she did with Quad was on essays, and fine tuning and developing the college list, working on ways to interface with the colleges along the way. Some of their recommendations, they would send Anna some, info sessions, or like specific, like, here's a STEM info session at, Yale or Tufts or wherever that she could go to, that something she hadn't seen. So that was very helpful, just to, get some of those resources on her radar. And of course, she worked a lot with them on her essays, the supplemental ones and the main essay. She had, as I said, she did apply early decision. So she didn't have a full 10 to 12 schools to complete, but she had gotten probably about 4 done by November with Quad, and was already starting on some of the others as well.
What a relief that is to get an early decision.
It's a very big gift to have that relief, and that was actually something else that they helped a lot with, in terms of trying to figure out, is the early decision process, like, do you want to do that? Why should you do that? Why you wouldn't do that? And then, how you choose the school to do the early decision with is different now than it certainly was in when I was applying, or even 5 or 7 years ago. So I think having those kind of up-to-date strategies that meet the times that are right now, which are unusual and volatile. And we were talking earlier about how unpredictable this college process is. So it's hard to know how to best strategize.
Absolutely. I feel like strategy is more than half the battle.
Yeah, and it's just great to have experts who are doing this all the time and familiar with the process, just because you're immersed in it, and we were not. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So Ardith, do you feel like you were able to be as involved as you wanted within the application process, while also giving Anna the autonomy to work with her consultant in the way that kind of worked best for her? And kind of what did that look like?
Yes, that was a question I had asked early on. How much, do parents participate? And basically they let us decide on that. And I really appreciated that, because, as I said, my daughter, her like long-term planning and thinking ahead, and the big picture thinking is not quite there yet. So for her, having me pop in every so often, I think, and finding that right balance of having me stop in or for a meeting or read, where she might be at, just looking at some of her essays, was very, very useful. And the 2 counselors that we worked with were very open to having me be as involved or not involved as, Anna and I wished. So that was very reassuring, that they weren't telling us what to do with that. They were letting us tell them what we thought we needed. And I did appreciate that. And I think we found a great kind of blend of just checking in every so often, and less, honestly, toward the end of the process, because I could just tell that Anna had it. So it worked out nicely that way.
Good. What about for you, Tara?
Yeah, I have to echo what Ardith said. It seemed like we were really making the call on how involved we wanted to be. My husband wanted no part of it whatsoever. Yes. He just hid somewhere in the house through the whole thing. But yeah, so initially I was attending more of the meetings, but then I sort of backed off a little bit. I liked that even when I would be on a call, they would make sure that Armand's voice came through. Patrick would always say, well, Armand, what do you think specifically about that? Or how do you feel about this? Because I think being well-meaning parents, we can, sometimes overshadow what the child wants or things. And they made sure while they respectfully welcomed me into the process, they still made sure his voice was heard, which I thought was great.
That's great.
I could add one more piece you just made me think of, Tara, with the voice being heard is, I think also the counselors that Anna worked with at Quad did a wonderful job with that. And I know that sometimes in the kind of the editing and shaping process with the essay, there were times where Anna would say, this isn't my voice. Like, I don't like, she literally would say, this is not my voice.
Yeah.
These are Monica's words more than my words. So then Anna would go back and change them back to the way she wanted it. And they were really great about providing feedback and maybe why they wanted, why they would make the suggestion they did. But if Anna, they always said, Anna, you can overrule that, and it's your call and your essay. So I think it was a nice blend of encouraging and helping to shape some of the ideas, but they were also very sensitive about the voice of the student.
It sounds like both of your children were really encouraged to be kind of in control of what they wanted to put out in the process.
Yeah.
Kind of being guided.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It wasn't like a Quad telling Anna what to do at all. It was just like, we're here shadowing you in the process and providing some guidance.
Oh, to piggy off of that question, and kind of the question before is, do you feel like having a Quad consultant was helpful for all of the aspects that you worked on with your counselors? And then I think the question after this is, how would the process have been different without having a counselor? I think those kind of go together. So was it helpful, and how would it have been different if you did not have the Quad support?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was incredibly helpful to us, and it also provided one aspect. It's sort of like having a cheerleader, if you will, right? So especially when we were going through the pre-process, and he would meet a milestone, he would feel like, oh, let me tell Patrick and Rohan about this. Look at that. So it created a much needed sort of camaraderie. There's people along with me cheering for me, and oh, that's too bad I didn't get the ACT score I wanted, but they're still there to encourage. And it's different having a parent say it's okay. So that sort of aspect helped a lot as well, besides sort of the nuts and bolts of putting together the application, for which there was no question that the Quad consultants are very qualified, and they did. But sort of those other intangibles, I think that also meant a lot to us.
How about you, Ardith?
Yeah, I absolutely do feel that the Quad consulting was extremely helpful, and for all of the reasons I've mentioned already. And I just can't really even imagine what it would have been like going through it without the support and the mapping and the guidance. And while of course I'm sure we would have, I just think it was a much more methodical and well thought out and guided process, and I appreciated that for Anna to have that, as well as me, as I said, we're all very busy people. So this college process is like another job on top of everything else that we're doing. And it is for our kids. So I think having that, coaching along the way to bridge the gaps and provide the mapping is just, amazing and necessary. Especially if you have students or kids that are looking at some of the very competitive schools where it's just hard to know what's going to work.
Absolutely. So we have a little bit of time left and a couple more questions. So if anyone has a question for Ardith or Tara, please pop those in the Q&A box and we'll get to those after our last couple of questions. So again, to kind of tail off of that last question I asked, I know college is not inexpensive, and having a college consultant requires money as well. Do you feel like it was worth the investment to work with Quad or like just a consulting company in general for this process?
I do. I feel like we would have been much more lost without the process and without Quad. I do think it was a worthwhile investment. And like I said earlier, I think the other sort of maybe unintended benefits are just, going through the coaching process, being a student who gets to learn that there's like a nice formal process for long-term project management, and knowing what it's like to be a coach and a coachee. I think it's great to have that experience to work with professionals, especially, as these our kids here are going into college, and they're going to be working on all sorts of other long-term projects that get bigger and bigger and more complicated. So I think it's a life skill in a way for them to have this experience.
What about you, Tara? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. On all accounts, it is expensive. The whole journey is expensive, but I think if you sort of take, the long approach to it and think about, like in our case, for example, they also helped us with scholarship essays and stuff. And my son did end up getting a full ride at one of the schools he was very interested in. So yes, you could be investing here, but if you're looking at some of those competitive scholarships, etc., that could help you, there as well. But even if you're not, it's where you want to invest money for your child, right? That's sort of what it comes down to. So if you can afford it, if you can budget for it, it's something I would highly recommend because the payoff is great.
All right. So what advice would you give to other parents whose children are starting off on their college application journey, whether it's about working with companies like Quad or just mindset, planning? What advice?
I can
Tara.
go. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think start early is the big piece of advice. And by start early, I don't mean writing the essays, in 10th grade, but start having those conversations. Every child is at a different place when it comes to college planning. But starting to think about it, starting to talk about it, I think is important. I talk to a lot of families in my community, and the one refrain I hear more than anything else is, I wish we had started early. I wish we had gotten started early, right? So that's one thing. And it doesn't mean sign up for the consultant early. Just start thinking about, where do you think your child wants to end up, whether that's geography, whether that's a major choice, career choice, type of school, any of those, touring schools, if you're making a work trip somewhere and, or a family vacation and there's a college nearby, go see it. Just getting started early so that when you go into the planning with or without a consultant, you have a sense of direction.
That is definitely advice that every single college counselor that works with Quad has said dozens of times to me and everyone else. It's great advice. What about you, Ardith? What's your advice?
Yes, I would also agree that starting early makes a lot of sense. And I know it's a delicate balance of not wanting to put too much pressure and artificially mold our kids into something that, that they're not, or that they resent. So striking that balance is important. And I do agree that starting early and poking around and looking at colleges or, talking with other people, doing info sessions. I mean, you can start those anytime, and those are a great way to start early. Even just thinking about like who are good people to be mentors, or who are going to be good people to provide recommendations. I think that was something that was important in Anna's situation. Just looking, finding those best recommendations. And she was fortunate also to have somebody outside of her school provide a recommendation for her that Quad highly recommended that we get that recommendation. So I think that was a piece of advice that was not encouraged by her school. So we were glad that they had a different take on it. Quad.
Absolutely. Thank you both. I think that's great advice. Sorry, Arda.
Oh yeah, well, I was just going to say too, just like for parents, I recommend, I just think that the Quad consulting process is very helpful to help us parents manage our own anxieties and our own concerns and stress levels around this. So my advice is to breathe and step back and let your kid work with Quad if you choose a consulting company like Quad, because it's really a benefit for the whole family, honestly.
Right. Well, thank you both. We did get one question in from a viewer. They both say congratulations to you, and their child has not yet decided what he wants to major in yet. And do either of you have any advice for helping your child explore a major or passion, something they want to pursue in college?
Yeah, I can go first. So I think it's different for each child, right? And obviously you don't have to pick a major until the second year of college, but I think it's a really great question. It does help focus the process a bit if your child knows what they're interested in. And it doesn't have to be super specific, but in our house, I think our approach was, my husband and I are both STEM professionals. So are you leaning towards STEM or are you not leaning towards STEM? And it's a 50-50 in our house. So getting to know that. And then once we had a sense of that might be the direction you're going, exposing them to those careers. We are shadowing, talking to family members or friends who do that for a living. And then they did some of their own exploring through clubs in school, like, oh, I want to try the robotics club. I want to do some of this. So I think exposure is really, really big, right? And then once they have a sense of that, it is less confusing than when you go on a college's website and you see there are like 108 majors. I mean, it's insane to me, the number of majors compared to when I applied, where it was just biology, chemistry, it was simple. Yeah. Now you have all these options. So I think it's nice for the kids to dabble and explore the college's website, but also to do some of that self-reflection and exploration before they get to the college application process.
It's definitely overwhelming. What about you, Arda?
Yeah, in terms of, I think it's great to not know what you want to do, because I think that means your child is in a place of exploring, and it's also wonderful when you have that kid who knows exactly what they want to do, because it does kind of make it easier to focus and kind of laser focus in one direction. I think the other, trying to figure out what to do. I agree with what Tara said, was, just trying to get exposure to different fields or other people that, you might know in your family or family friends that to connect with around just discussing maybe what things they studied. I will say for my daughter, in terms of how she kind of figured out what she was interested in, or at least where she stands now, is she took a couple of things. One is she used to say she wanted to go to music school because she absolutely loves singing and plays in jazz jazz singing. But she took a biology class at Boston University and was just completely enthralled by it and could not stop talking about every single little detail of biology, which is still what she does today. And so that just became really clear that this was, a direction for her, was just through, her love of that one class, which became, a laser focus of interest for her.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. I think that brings us to an end for today. I want to thank everyone who joined us tonight for popping on, and Ardith and Tara, I want to thank you both so much for being here and spending your Wednesday night with us. I know I had a great time talking to the both of you, and congratulations to both of your children and to the both of you. And yeah, I hope everyone has a really fantastic night, and look out for an email with a recording of this webinar coming within the next day or so.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and best wishes to everybody.
Yes, good luck.
Yes. All right. Good night, everyone.